On the morning of April 25, 1999, Dayton, Ohio, woke to gunfire. Roger Troutman, the genius with the talkbox, the man who gave Zapp its futuristic sound and later fueled West Coast rap with hits like California Love, was bleeding out in the street, shot multiple times outside his recording studio. His brother Larry, the band's longtime business manager, had pulled the trigger. Moments later, just a mile away, Larry turned the gun on himself inside his black Lincoln. It wasn't random. It wasn't a robbery gone bad. It was family. This is the story of how years of resentment, money disputes, bruised egos, and unspoken rage tore apart one of Ohio's most innovative musical dynasties and left two brothers dead. It was a crisp Sunday morning. Salem Avenue was quiet except for the hum of traffic and the occasional buzz of a passing car stereo. At about 7:20 a.m., Roger Troutman, age 47, pulled up to his recording studio, carrying nothing but his keys and his morning energy. The man was always working. If Zapp wasn't recording, someone else was renting the space. Larry Troutman was waiting for him. He was 54, a serious man who wore responsibility like armor. Unlike Roger, Larry wasn't the performer, the showman, the voice box legend. He was the one who handled the money, ran the contracts, made sure everyone got paid, or at least made sure the business stayed alive. Witnesses heard shouting. A few seconds later, 5 gunshots tore through the air. Roger stumbled, trying to make it to his car. He collapsed in the middle of the road, bleeding. Larry didn't say a word. He got into his Lincoln and drove off. 20 minutes later, police found him slumped over the wheel of his car with a single gunshot wound to the head. One brother gone instantly, the other gasping for breath on the way to the hospital. By the time doctors tried to save Roger, the man who'd made more bounce to the ounce, it was too late. Dayton lost 2 sons that morning, and the Troutman family, once bound by music, money, and blood, was shattered beyond repair. To understand how things exploded, you have to understand the Troutmans. Roger wasn't just a frontman. He was a prodigy. In the late 1970s, he and his brothers, Larry, Lester, Terry, built Zapp from the ground up in Dayton's West Side, a neighborhood already steeped in funk thanks to bands like Ohio Players and Slave. Their sound was rubbery, electric, soaked in talkbox vocals that made synthesizers sing. When George Clinton co-signed them and Bootsy Collins helped get them to Warner Brothers, they hit big with the album Zapp in 1980 and its smash, More Bounce to the Ounce. But Zapp wasn't just Roger. Larry was the businessman, Lester played drums, and Terry handled bass. They were a family empire, run like a family business, tight-knit, but full of friction. Roger was always the star. He loved performing. He lived for the spotlight. Larry didn't. Larry stayed behind the scenes, cutting deals, paying bills, controlling expenses. He'd been managing Roger's career since day one, and as the years passed, tension grew over who was really running the show. By the late 1990s, Zapp's heyday was over, but Roger was still hot property. His talkbox sound was all over hip-hop and R&B. He'd worked with Dr. Dre, Tupac, and countless others, cashing checks while the old Zapp royalties dwindled. Roger wanted control of his own money, his own career, his own future. Larry felt pushed aside. He'd built this thing from the ground up, kept the studio running, booked the tours, balanced the books. But Roger, now older and wiser about the business, didn't want Larry calling the shots anymore. Sources close to the family said Roger was preparing to fire Larry as his manager. He wanted out of the Troutman corporate setup and into his own independent company. Larry saw it as betrayal. Without Roger, there was no Zapp. And without Zapp, there was no Troutman family business. There were whispers of missing money. Whispers of shady deals, unpaid taxes, and promises broken. Whether it was true or not almost didn't matter, because in Larry's mind, Roger was walking away from him. After 20 years of loyalty, he thought his younger brother was cutting him loose like yesterday's news. Friends say Larry had been acting strangely in the weeks leading up to that April morning. He was quieter, more withdrawn, and openly bitter about Roger's plans. One family member remembered Larry saying, "I built this for him, and now he wants to take all." Roger, meanwhile, was upbeat. he was still recording constantly, excited about future projects. He just worked on tracks that would become posthumous hits for Tupac and Dre. Roger didn't seem worried about his brother. Maybe he thought Larry would cool off. Maybe he underestimated just how deep Larry's resentment ran. The studio, Troutman Enterprises, was the family's pride. But it was also where arguments went down. Sometimes money, sometimes control, sometimes just plain ego. Witnesses later recalled that Larry and Roger had shouting matches about contracts and payouts. They'd cool off, then go back to work like nothing happened. But the bad blood was piling up. Larry waited for Roger that morning. No one knows exactly what he intended, whether he came to scare him, confront him, or kill him outright. But Larry brought a gun. When Roger arrived, there was no negotiation, no sit down. Larry was ready to end it. Gunfire ripped across the street as Roger tried to run. People came out of nearby houses, stunned to see one of Dayton's heroes lying in the road. Roger's Cadillac rolled forward in gear, doors open, horn blaring. Blood trailed across the pavement. Larry didn't chase him. He didn't stay. He just got back in his Lincoln and drove off calmly. Minutes later, police spotted Larry's car parked just a mile away. The driver's window was shattered. He'd put the gun to his head and pulled the trigger. The news hit Dayton like a thunderclap. 2 brothers dead. One a musical icon, the other his own flesh and blood. Fans and family gathered outside Troutman Enterprises in disbelief. Radio stations played Computer Love, and more bounced to the ounce on repeat, crying on air between songs. At the funeral, the family mourned in silence. There were no big explanations, no press conferences, no tell-all moments. Everyone knew this was more than business. This was personal. This was years of unspoken resentment boiling over. Dayton lost more than 2 men that day. It lost a piece of its soul. Police called it a murder-suicide. There was no evidence anyone else was involved. But the questions never went away. Was Larry broke? Did Roger really plan to fire him? Was this about money or about respect? Could anyone have stopped it? Zapp never recovered. The band still tours with surviving members, but the heart, the magic between Roger's genius and Larry's discipline, is gone. Roger Troutman was inducted into the Dayton Walk of Fame posthumously, remembered as one of the most innovative musicians of his era. But Larry's name is rarely mentioned except as the man who ended all. To this day, friends say the family avoids talking about it. The pain runs too deep. No one wants to relive the morning when brothers became enemies and blood stained the streets of Dayton. Roger Troutman's sound still lives in hip-hop, sampled by artists who weren't even born when Zapp was on top. Larry's role is harder to honor. He was the manager, the businessman, the man who kept the lights on. Without him, Zapp might never have left Dayton. But his final act cast a shadow no one can shake. In the end, this wasn't just a music story. It wasn't just funk or hip-hop or business. It was family, torn apart by pride, anger, and betrayal. On April 25, 1999, 2 brothers faced each other outside a recording studio. One wanted freedom, the other wanted control. Neither walked away.